You're watching ABC10 Plus This Week.
Hello, I'm Becca Habiger. You're watching ABC10 This Week. The death of sitting Congressman Doug LaMalfa shocked the political world and Northern California. We have reaction, plus a full recap of Governor Newsom's final State of the State address. Then, in dollars and cents, experts warning how medical debt can still appear on credit reports and affect credit scores. What you need to know. ABC10 This Week starts right now.
Is still reeling tonight after the killing of 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good, shot in the head Wednesday by a federal immigration officer.
Tonight, a Sacramento woman is now mourning her friend, saying it's still hard to believe.
ABC 10's Garshpal Sangha joins us in studio now. Garshpal, we know this is such a difficult time for her. What did she share with you?
Yeah, Chris and Laura, friends and family across the country are struggling to process how Renee Good's life ended. And I spoke with her longtime friend who says she's leaning on memories, remembering the woman she grew up with and loved like a sister. As the country grapples with the fallout in Minneapolis.
Yeah, there's not really words for it.
For Stephanie, who did not want to provide her last name to protect her family, it's more than just news.
She was my friend, and she was loved, and
She and Renee Good were inseparable.
Truly an incredible human, and it's a real loss.
Growing up in Colorado Springs, Stephanie shared this photo. That is Renee on the left and Stephanie on the right. They were bound by a church youth group, high school memories, and adventures abroad. Stephanie says Renee was someone she looked up to.
I was 2 years younger than her, and I just thought she was the coolest person in the world. I wanted to be just like her.
That emotional awareness, Stephanie says, made Renee someone others felt safe with.
She was very observant and aware of everyone around her. She wanted everyone to feel comfortable and included and a part of things.
Stephanie says Renee recently moved to Minnesota with her partner, starting what friends believed was a happy new chapter. A chapter no one expected would turn to this. A chapter that has Stephanie avoiding videos of the shooting and choosing instead to remember the moments that defined Renee's life.
In conversation, it came up that I had lied to my parents about where we were going because I might not have been allowed to go. And she looked at me and she said, "You have to tell your parents where you're going. They need to know where you are if there's an emergency." She wanted me to have fun, but she also wanted to make sure that we were safe and taken care of. Wise beyond her years, absolutely. Absolutely.
As the investigation continues, Stephanie, who now lives in Sacramento, says one thing is painfully clear.
This didn't have to happen, and it shouldn't have happened, and she should have had more years with us.
And Stephanie tells me Renee was deeply loved, and she hopes people remember her for not how she died, but how she lived. Chris and Laura?
Garshpal, we thank you for that reflection. We'll check back in as we learn more. Here closer to home, hundreds of people gathered outside the John Moss Federal Building in Sacramento last night, demanding answers and accountability.
And that's where we find ABC 10's Austin Castro live tonight. Austin, tell us about the scene right now and what you're learning.
Well, Chris and Laura, at this hour, we are seeing about a dozen protesters just down the street here on N Street outside the John Moss Federal Building. Certainly a much different side than the hundreds we saw here in the same area just last night. Now, this area is notable for seeing protesters typically Tuesday and Thursday nights. However, this is notable in the sense that it comes as we are learning about that shooting in Portland with the federal agents and the 2 people shot. Of course, it also comes as we are learning more about the fatal shooting in Minneapolis just yesterday morning. Now, earlier today, I did speak with some of the protesters that were out here who say that they are outraged and calling for change. On Thursday morning, the aftermath of vandalism at the John Moss Federal Building in Sacramento remains visible. From spray painted messages, destroyed card readers, to a broken gate. The damage comes after hundreds protested outside the building in response to a woman shot and killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis.
When they start shooting people in the streets, I think that's when to stand up.
Krista McCord spent her lunch break Thursday voicing her outrage over the action of federal agents.
I'm pissed that people that are following the law are being targeted by ICE and, in this case, murdered in broad daylight.
The Department of Homeland Security alleges the woman who died, Renee Nicole Good, attempted to run over their officers with her car when an ICE agent fatally shot her. Meanwhile, Minneapolis' mayor and Minnesota's governor dispute this claim. As for the vandalism on the federal building in Sacramento, ABC10 reached out to the Sacramento Police Department. They say Federal Protective Services is the lead investigating agency, but added, quote, "We have been working with them on the back end to identify the suspects responsible and hold them accountable. While we support and protect individuals' First Amendment right to protest, vandalism of any kind will not be tolerated." Another protester we spoke with from Sacramento didn't want her face shown. While she remains upset with recent federal actions, she disagrees with the damage caused Wednesday night.
I don't believe that destruction of property is something anybody ought to do. Putting chalk on a sidewalk is one thing. Spray painting a building is another thing entirely.
She encourages people to continue making their voices heard peacefully as messages continue to line the sidewalks around the federal building. Meanwhile, we reached out to the Department of Homeland Security, who oversees federal protective services. They confirmed the various damage to the building and says in part, quote, "This violence must end. Under President Trump and Secretary Noem, law and order will prevail." In just the last minute here, we started hearing the protesters chanting, also waving their signs and flags. Many of the passing cars also honking as they pass by the protesters. This is, of course, a developing scene. We will continue to follow it and bring you the latest as it becomes available. Live in Sacramento, Austin Castro, ABC 10.
Yeah, we do appreciate that, Austin. Good to know. Our coverage also continues on the ABC 10 app. Austin, thank you for that update.
We're seeing results, making streets safer for everyone, fully recognizing that quality of life is at the core of so much of the frustration people feel about our state.
It was a big day for Governor Gavin Newsom. He gave his final State of the State address.
And we have live team coverage tonight. ABC 10's Jeannie Wynn is standing by with the governor's focus on the state budget.
But first, ABC 10 State Matters political reporter Jenny Huh was there in the chamber and joins us live now with a recap of the day's points. Jenny, it was another critical day at the Capitol.
Chris, Laura, good evening. Another big day here at the Capitol. Indeed, it was all about the state, of course, but a big part of that, the state of the budget. I'm hearing over and over again, the budget is often a statement of one's priorities. And today we got a first look at what the governor's priorities for his final term in office may be. This is all ahead of the final budget proposal anticipated for tomorrow morning.
In California, we're not silent. You're not silent. You're not hunkering down. We're not retreating. We're a beacon. The state is providing a different narrative, an operational model, a policy blueprint for others to follow.
Thursday's State of the State focused on California's wins, the challenges still ahead, and its stand against the Trump administration.
Mr. President, you can't cut off critical food assistance for millions of people. You can't send the military into American cities without justification. And you cannot cruelly and illegally cut off funding for medical research, homeland security, or disaster response.
Newsom slammed those federal funding cuts, which only add pressure as lawmakers tackle next year's budget, expected to be $18 billion in the red, a figure the governor did not mention in his speech.
We have had to deal with deficit after deficit after deficit, and that's one area he can't blame President Trump for.
California Republicans responding with what they call the real state of the state.
Gaslight Gavin would have you believe he's made historic improvements to the quality of your life since taking office 7 years ago.
Newsom did address the top-of-mind issue of
affordability. It's not a word we just discovered.
Noting the cost of housing is, quote, California's original sin.
Clearing away regulatory thickets, forcing local governments, often resistance, to get in the game, and modernizing our environmental review. But we obviously have more work to do.
Saying this year it's about tackling the cost of construction as well as preventing institutional investors from dominating the market. Newsom also boasting improvements in investment and results for homelessness under his governorship, pointing to the voter-approved Proposition 1, a bond to build more mental health housing, as a success story. And a rather unexpected emphasis on education, including an additional $1 billion investment in high-need schools.
I'm proud to submit a budget tomorrow that has the most significant investments in California's education history.
If he really wants to make education a priority, that's fine. Something else is going to have to be less of a priority.
Meantime, Democratic leaders say they're gearing up to respond to the final budget proposal.
We have to go back and look what is feasible is not based on the direction and the priorities for each of our houses.
We know that the out years for our state budget do not look good. High deficits.
Now, as of Thursday afternoon, California has filed 53 lawsuits against federal overreach. The governor also noting that California is leading when it comes to AI regulation and also supporting young men and boys. He also noted that climate change is linked to economic risk, and he called out the Trump administration for not sending formal U.S. delegation to the COP30 climate conference last year. Now, political experts are saying all these issues may very well dictate how Newsom runs that shadow presidential campaign ahead of 2028. Live at the state capitol, Jenny He, ABC 10.
Good to know, Jenny. There's a lot at stake in 2026, and you'll be tracking it all for us. Thank you for the update.
Well, the address came just one day before he's expected to release that budget proposal.
Governor Newsom struck an optimistic tone on California's finances, even as warnings of a potential deficit loom.
ABC 10's Jeannie Nguyen breaks down what we know and why some lawmakers are urging caution.
Chris and Laura, the governor painted a hopeful picture of the state's finances during his address. But just months ago, California's nonpartisan legislative analyst's office warned the state could be facing a nearly $18 billion deficit. Now some Republican lawmakers say Californians should take a closer look at the numbers. In his first in-person State of the State address since 2020, Governor Gavin Newsom previewed his upcoming budget and offered an optimistic look.
It will be a general fund budget of $248.3 billion.
That figure represents the governor's proposed general fund budget for this fiscal year. And when it comes to revenue, Newsom says the state is bringing in far more than expected.
But this is interesting. You may want to write this down. It includes revenues that are $42.3 billion higher than we forecasted. $42.3 billion higher.
But just weeks ago, the legislative analyst's office painted a very different picture and predicted a nearly $18 billion deficit. At the time, the state's Department of Finance acknowledged significant budget challenges ahead.
The legislative analyst has highlighted a number of the challenges that we and the governor have underscored throughout 2025.
H.D. Palmer would not speak with ABC 10 before the governor's formal budget proposal, but Republican lawmakers say the numbers highlighted in the State of the State deserve scrutiny.
This speech is about things he said and things he didn't say.
Republican Senator Roger Nilo says the governor's revenue figure is misleading. He argues the $42.3 billion number reflects revenue accumulated over several years and not new money available now.
What he was referring to was a cumulative excess in revenue over a few years.
The LAO's fall predictions say the state's revenues have increased because of taxes from high-income earners and stock market growth. But analysts warn those gains still fall short of covering the state's spending commitments.
That is a significant misrepresentation. It'll be cleaned up tomorrow.
And the governor is expected to formally present his budget proposal tomorrow. That plan will give lawmakers a cleaner picture on whether the state's optimistic outlook holds or if difficult decisions lie ahead. Chris.
Okay, Jenny, thank you. If you missed the governor's final State of the State address, you can watch it right now on the ABC 10 app. It's free to download on your TV.
All day, reactions have been pouring in from both sides of the aisle as California lawmakers mourn the death of Congressman Doug LaMalfa and what happens next for his seat.
ABC 10 State Matters political reporter Jenny He is live at the Capitol with the latest on how elected officials are responding.
Jenny, tell us, what are you hearing from our state leaders today?
Chris, Laura, good evening. A solemn day at the Capitol indeed, and like you both said, it's bipartisan mourning that is happening. The general consensus is that the congressman was someone who was very dedicated and delivered for his district, really caring about those rural California issues like agriculture, water storage, wildfire prevention, and even recovery efforts. And another example of how solemn it has been today. Senator Roger Nilo of Fair Oaks is typically very readily available for interview requests, but actually passed on commenting today because he is in fact grieving the loss of a friend and colleague. Here's my conversation with our legislators.
Shock and disbelief, like I still can't believe this is really real. It's been a tough morning for sure.
A grief-stricken Tuesday at the California Capitol, lawmakers paused to honor the political and personal legacy of Congressman Doug LaMalfa.
He was a big fan of NASCAR, and I would say he drove like a NASCAR driver.
Assemblymember James Gallagher sharing fond memories, describing LaMalfa as a mentor and big brother, and that he got his start in politics working as a 22-year-old fellow for then Assemblyman LaMalfa.
I owe a lot of that to him.
Gallagher also recalling what he says is classic Doug LaMalfa, getting to each State of the Union address early to grab good seats and staying late after to meet with the president, regardless of party.
I remember him talking about political signs. You got to put them in the right spot where they get the most exposure.
A Republican congressman, yes, but remembered as proof of bipartisanship.
Doug was a person that I could talk to, and we discussed issues that we didn't necessarily agree on, sometimes be the only Republican in a meeting of 10 or 12 Democrats.
LaMalfa was a fourth-generation rice farmer and represented California's first congressional district since 2013, serving in both the state assembly and Senate prior to that. Recently, the congressman was outspoken in opposing Proposition 50, the state's temporary redrawing of its congressional maps. Prop 50 passed and redrew LaMalfa's district, though he was adamant about running for re-election.
He was Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. We talked as recently about a week ago about him continuing to run for a fight for rural California and run for re-election even after the Prop 50 news came out, and I'm just going to miss him.
LaMalfa, a strong incumbent and reliant member of the California Republican delegation, the chairwoman saying this when asked about LaMalfa's successor.
That's a discussion for tomorrow.
Again, the Republican Party is stressing that right now is the time to mourn, but soon they will face that urgent question of who is going to succeed Congressman Doug LaMalfa, especially as their majority in Congress is getting slimmer. Live at the state capitol, Jenny Huh, ABC 10.
As for what comes next politically, we spoke with Republican and Democratic strategists today about the various possibilities. ABC 10's Becca Habegger joins us live in studio to discuss what voters could see.
Yeah, Alex, Governor Newsom's office tells ABC 10 that by law, the governor will have to call for a special election sometime within the next 14 days. But his office isn't saying when he might plan to hold that election, and the timing has political impacts. With Congressman LaMalfa's death, the balance of power in the U.S. House of Representatives stands at 218 Republicans and 213 Democrats. That's why Democratic strategist Steve Maviglio and Republican strategist Tim Rosales both say a lot rides on the refilling of LaMalfa's seat.
I think that neither party wants to give up the possibility of a seat, and particularly a seat like this. And given this dynamic that we have now, I do think and expect Republicans to compete for it kind of in the near term for the special election, because there are several important votes and things that come up all the time.
So it's up to the governor. He could probably call an election in March, I think might be the earliest date, and then perhaps have the runoff in June. That's possible, but not probable.
Maviglio says Governor Newsom might stall the special election as long as possible to avoid giving the seat back to a Republican.
LaMalfa was always a very solid Republican vote for the speaker on everything. So if the governor can push this out so the Democrats have a little bit more of an advantage, I think he will do that.
One possibility is Governor Newsom aligns the special election primary with the midterm primaries in June. It's also possible Newsom aligns the actual special election with the regular midterms in November. So whoever wins the special election could serve as little as about a month before the candidate elected in the midterms gets sworn in next January. In other words, the voters in LaMalfa's congressional district may go without representation for most of 2026.
Really, who loses, and I think who is going to bear the brunt of this, obviously, are the people who live in that district.
As for who will run, Rosales says, from a strategic standpoint, it makes sense that anyone wanting to run in the midterms also throws their hat in for this special election.
It's an opportunity in a couple of ways. One is, I think, the financial thresholds and the money that they can raise for each election expands. So with the financial limits that you have in a federal race, it really elevates the amount of money that they can potentially raise and then potentially spend in terms of advertising.
And it might not attract a lot of top tier Republicans because it's a seat that they'll only hold literally for months. So it might be somebody who is well advanced in their career, but to spend that kind of money and energy for a seat that's not going to be theirs for very long, or would have to pull out a miraculous upset under the new district lines, that's a tough call for somebody to make.
As you know, California voters passed Prop 50, which will redraw congressional district lines to favor Democrats starting with the midterms. So voters in the special election will be those in the current District 1, which leans Republican. The redrawn District 1 is designed to lead Democratic. We'll learn within the next 2 weeks when that special election will be held.
All right, Becca, thank you so much for that. And we are continuing the conversation now. We are joined by our political expert, Chris McKeely. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Unfortunate, though, for the circumstances. I do want to ask you, because as Becca was mentioning with all the election conversations, this could get really confusing for voters, especially if they see two different names in two different places on their ballot. So talk to me about what voters should really know coming up.
Well, they have the opportunity perhaps in the June primary, assuming that the governor calls the special election at that time, that they would cast two votes, one to fill the remainder of Congressman LaMalfa's term through January of next year, and then to do a new 2-year election for a new candidate. It could be the same individual, it could be somebody else.
Now, we've heard a lot of Democratic names coming out saying that they would have run against Doug LaMalfa, but we haven't really seen a lot of Republicans. I know that obviously the party was really supporting him as the incumbent there, but now with his passing, has there been any mentions or any names kind of rolling around out there that might, for the Republican side, step into this role?
Well, I think first they're going to go through a little bit of a period of mourning, but some names that have been tossed about include the current Assembly member, the former Republican leader, James Gallagher, perhaps former state senator Brian Daly, who covered a lot of that congressional district in his state Senate time. So those are names that we've heard, but of course no one officially has come out.
Now, would it be possible, I know we've talked about District 3, Kevin Kiley's district. Do you think at all there would be a chance that he would jump, because he hasn't announced yet what district he is going to run in, but to jump from District 3 to maybe District 1, or you don't think that's a likely possibility?
Well, it's always possible.
Anything's
remember
possible,
that,
yeah.
yes, but remember that the U.S. Constitution only requires somebody running for the U.S. House to be a resident of the state of California, not of a particular congressional district.
So they don't have to live in the district that they represent.
That's correct. And so it is possible, I would assume more likely he would stay in this geographic area. I'm sure we'll see one or more Republicans ultimately announce after a certain period of time. Remember, the governor hasn't even called that special election, so we're not sure the exact timing of it.
Chris McKeely, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right, and our team recently spent time in Congressman LaMalfa's district. In September, I went to his ranch to talk about Prop 50 and many other things, like what people think about him. Because one thing was absolutely clear when we spent time in the area. There were people that loved him, and I do not say that lightly. When I would ask people, what do you think about the job Representative LaMalfa has done? They would go, oh, Doug? Yeah, Doug, we love Doug. And, to many people in his district, he was more than a congressman. He was one of them, a fourth-generation farmer, a father, a grandfather. So here's a candid moment from our interview that never aired until now. Do you think a lot of people in your district see you in themselves?
I hope so.
Yeah.
The logo my campaign people came up with was "He's one of us." The motto, I mean. He's one of us. I think I am, yeah, I've got this fancy title and I've been around the block on all this a little bit, so I don't probably talk exactly like everybody does when I get on a rant like this and stuff, but I think I'm pretty much of them. Same thing. I just have these different experiences that they don't because of where I go. I go, every week 2,500 miles that way and walk around marble and tile and stuff for, 72 hours, then I come home again.
See, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, being out here, it seems like a completely different world.
Oh, yeah.
And then you go, to Sacramento or DC. How do you still remain true to who you are here?
These are the clothes. These are the same clothes I wear on the plane to there and from there.
Really?
Yeah, I put on the suit when I walk in.
Well, except for your office when you're barefoot sometimes, but.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I take the shoes off, and people still come in like, "Hey, guys, it's don't excuse the feet here, but you know, because and so I guess that's probably part of why I'm one of the folks here instead of that.
We laughed a lot during that interview. And something else that really stuck with me is at the end of the interview, again, we spent a lot of time with him at the ranch, and I really grilled him on so many different topics. But at the end, he goes, well, I might as well give you one of these. And I was like, what could he possibly be giving me? And he gave me a hug. And I won't recap our entire conversation. That is now something that I'll hold close to myself. But pretty much what he told me is he said, thank you for being here. Thank you for spending time in my world, in my community, and thank you for the job that you do. And I think that that moment has always stuck with me because truly it speaks to the type of man that he was.
In tonight's Dollars and Cents, 2026 is here, and as you reassess your finances for the year ahead, we continue to track the impacts of medical debt on your financial health. An expert I talked with says on the federal level, roadblocks and protections remain, but there are ways to help you get your medical debt under control.
It's really a burden for consumers, and it's really the consumers that have to pay, figuratively speaking, for that being on their credit report.
Sacramento-based financial advisor and coach Maureen Paley says medical debt can show up on your credit report and impact your credit score. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau issued new regulations at the start of 2025, but the fate of the CFPB and its regulations are still uncertain.
Tell me about some of the movements to get that excluded.
This has been years of advocacy from consumer advocates to say, hey, this isn't fair. This doesn't feel fair because I can't help the fact that maybe 5 years ago I got sick and I wasn't able to pay a $10,000 medical bill.
In the final days of the Biden administration, the CFPB announced new regulations barring medical debt from credit reports, effective March 17th of last year. The CFPB workforce was ordered to stop working by Acting Director Russ Vought in February after President Trump took office. But because of a bill signed by Governor Gavin Newsom in 2024, California is one of 15 states that don't include medical debt on a credit report. So double check your credit report to see if your medical debt still shows up.
And if it does, you can file a dispute with the credit bureau.
Paley recommends asking the provider you owe debt to whether they offer options for what's called charity care. She says it's for patients who experience hardship or financial challenges during the time of their care and are not able to make payments. Another option is to offer paying what you can and try to negotiate an affordable payment plan. Paley says it's always worth it to ask. Also, the CFPB says be sure to review bills for errors, ask your provider for interest-free payment, and be careful about using credit cards or medical credit cards to pay your medical bills. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. You can stream all of our Dollars and Cents coverage on the free ABC10 app. Remember, your money questions have answers. Email me at lpainter@abc10.com.
Thanks for watching ABC10 this week. We are here 24/7 on the free ABC10 TV streaming app. You can get your local news and weather anytime, anywhere. I'm Becca Habiger. Take care, and we'll see you next time.